Good afternoon. I'm thinking that with so many AP tests taking place and other time commitments that I would do our final lesson for the class via a video. And it's not necessarily the longest lecture, but it is one that is necessary to cover with criminology. So what you're seeing on the screen right now are aerial views of some of Minnesota's prisons. Now, prisons are oftentimes for long-term offenders, whereas jails are sometimes most often for short-term offenders or people who are in the process of being moved back and forth between court. So Minnesota systems, we have several different prison systems within the state. And in this box here, you see the list of prisons that we have here in Minnesota. And we have what is considered a 4-level custody system, which means we go from the maximum level prison system all the way down to a minimum system. And I'm going to walk you through those steps just very briefly. So when we look at what is the purpose of the prison system, you're going to see the mission here: to reduce the recidivism. Recidivism is just the ability to repeat. So when the mission of the Minnesota prison system is to reduce repeat offenders through programming, supervision, classes. They're trying to create a system where individuals who are in the prison system have the ability to gain skills, go through treatment, so that when released, they are able to become functioning members of our society. So we, as you see, have these 4 prison level systems. Now, this is an aerial view of Oak Park Heights. Now, Oak Park Heights is Minnesota's only state maximum security prison. And what you're seeing here, you can see, the intake building being here. And it's kind of hard to see, but if you look close, the prison itself is built down into the St. Croix quarry. So when they built Oak Park Heights, they wanted to make sure that there was no chance of inmates escaping. And so they built the prison down. And so anything on the outside here is actually rock quarry. So the way to escape would be to actually climb up these several stories inside here and try to get out on the roof. It's a very unique construction. So when we go, here's a better picture of Oak Park Heights where you can actually see it is built down. These are what we would consider our worst offenders. We covered Byron Smith, and he is housed here. So when we look at the maximum security, what does that really mean? What you're seeing here is that these are, as we said, the individuals who have some of the longest sentences because of the nature of their crime. And so in a system that is maximum, these inmates, and there are different maximum levels within the system, but these individuals are in these cells, and this is basically where they live. And most of them will get only 1 hour of recreation in a 24-hour period. They eat in their prisons, they sleep in their prisons, they do all their bodily necessities in their prison. And when they are moved around the prison, they are moved by escort. I had the opportunity of visiting a few of our prisons, not because I visited them, but that I was able to tour them. And I have toured Shakopee, St. Cloud, and I'm going to miss it. That other one's blanking. Oh, excuse me, Lino. I visited Lino Lakes. Duh, that's where I live. And they are not maximum security. So when you think of prison and you think of the tiny little cells and they're living in their prison cell, this is kind of what you're seeing. They're there. Oftentimes they are by themselves because they are the most dangerous, and having them with another inmate would not end well. These prisons are often, not only are they so secure and moving, but they are possibly single, or in this case, you see the double razor wire. And if they were to ever try to escape, they'd have to get through that razor wire as well. Couple pictures from some of these prisons. You see them being, before they are allowed to come out of their cell, they have to be handcuffed. The handcuff will attach here to this steel door. They'll open up. This individual has a spit guard on because he tends to share his bodily fluids. And then we have a couple over here where you see they are being transitioned. And so they don't get to sit in a waiting room to meet somebody. They actually will have to sit in essentially what we would consider cages. So that's some of the images. A couple more images from a maximum security. Here they are moving their food in. They are being escorted. You see this particular individual is being escorted with 4 guards. Again, these individuals are probably waiting to see a doctor, and so they are put into holding, I hate to say it, holding cages. These pictures are not all from Oak Park Heights. These are from different maximum security systems throughout the United States. When we get to the next level, we're looking at what we call a closed security. So it's not quite medium, but it's certainly not maximum. And we have 3 of those: Rush City, St. Cloud, and Stillwater. And here's some images of these prisons. This is St. Cloud, this is Stillwater, and this one is Rush City. And we'll be looking more specifically at these prisons themselves. Closed security means a couple of things. As we get to less security, we're starting to see that inmates are coming together more in cells. They're getting a little bit more freedom to move around. They may be attending classes. They may be going through treatment in a smaller group rather than a max where they are literally locked down. So you're starting to see that it could be 2-person to a cell. They still have a toilet and a sink within the cell. There is, as I said, more movement here. They may have more free time. And that's when you start to see more of that open space. So if we're looking at images of a medium or 1 down from a maximum, these are some of the images you might see. So this is 2 bunks here. Definitely an older prison. I pulled these pictures from offline, not necessarily from our own prison system. Okay. St. Cloud is unique. When I got a chance to go there, one of the first things I noticed is the tape on the ground, and the tape there's a bunch of different colored tapes, and they lead to different parts of the prison itself. Our next level is what we call medium level. And we're starting, as I said, when you start to see these other prisons, you're going to start to see way less officers moving inmates, way more freedom, although it's prison, they don't have the freedom to leave. So again, when we're looking here, this is Lino Lakes. This is the one that's very close to my home. We get into, and again, I'm going to mess these up, but we've got Faribault, and again, I think another picture of Stillwater in there. So when we start looking at the medium level, same thing I've already stated. You're going to see more inmates to a cell. In fact, in medium levels, you might actually see dorms with a bunch of beds in an area. When you see communal shower, meaning that there's a group of individuals sharing a specific location, you're going to see the guard towers. St. Cloud is unique because they have a number of them you can see from the Highway 10 as you're driving north. However, not all of them are occupied on a 24-hour basis, but in all these prisons, medium, maximum, and the closed security, there are guards that drive the campus the entire 24 hours. More pictures. You're starting to see a lot more people in a smaller space. This one just gets me because you got four bunk beds here. Here's another four, here's another four. So you're looking at 12 inmates. Here's over on this side, you've got one, two, three of them again. So you've got 24 individuals living in this very small area. Does it cause problems? Of course, it's going to cause problems. You've got um, multiple reasons why people are being placed together. One of the big debates with our prison system is why we are putting nonviolent offenders in with violent offenders. And it's something that's been discussed, and people aren't necessarily in agreement with how we do the system, whether it's state or federal, that when you put a nonviolent offender in with a violent offender, you may have a more violent non-offender coming out than went in. And then our minimum security. Minimum security is very unique in that in some cases in minimum security prisons, there's not even fences. I found it very interesting when I went to visit Shakopee. And one of the things I want to point out about this is Shakopee is unique because it is all levels of security. They have maximum, closed, medium, and minimum security all on the same campus because Shakopee is our only campus that houses female offenders. All the other ones that are in this list, these are all male offenders. Shakopee is the only one with just the females. And Shakopee, within the last decade, they didn't even have a fence around the prison, even though they had some very high level offenders in that prison. They just never even had a prison. And in fact, it was unique when we went to visit Shakopee. There's a school right across the street, and for many, many, many years, there weren't issues with people going onto the property or inmates leaving. And so the city started pushing for a fence, and eventually they did get the fence. So when we look at a minimum security, obviously it is our least restrictive. Sometimes these are like workhouses where the inmate stays there at night, but during the day they go to work and then they come back from work and they check in and they stay there overnight. So it might be a work release. They say comfortable dorm rooms, but remember it is a prison. And there's just a lot more opportunity for the prisoners. However, this is a site of what you might see in a minimum security is where they are confined to the campus, but we are running out of space and our prison systems are at their seams. They're busting at the seams. And so you end up with a whole bunch of inmates in a very small area. And I think this picture is one, I don't know exactly where this prison is, but I find it very interesting that if you look real close at this, you're seeing 3 high. So there are 3 bunks here. And you start counting these numbers and you find that there's a lot of people. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm looking at 11. So if I go 11 times 15, you've got in this one space 165 offenders. Awful lot. I think it's interesting when you see a couple of these, like this one particularly here, where they're putting towels down or sheets or clothing so they can almost create their own tiny little space of privacy. Back in this area here, you see the bathrooms. So you've got sinks, you've got showers, you've got toilets, nothing's private in prison. And I think that's one of the things that individuals sometimes forget. There's an absolute lack of privacy and basically I would say humility because they're going to check. They check inmates quite often. We also have a system in Minnesota for juveniles. In fact, at the Lino Lakes campus, they have a juvenile facility and they have a high school over here called Pines. And that is where juveniles will actually, not all juvenile offenders, but there are juvenile offenders that are actually required to go to school on that prison campus. And if we look at this particular chart, this is one of the things that we will not get to in this class because of this situation, but we have spent a lot of time. One of the things you're going to notice in the next assignment or your final assignment for the class is that there's a high prison population for drugs, and there's a reason for that. One of the things we never did get really to the ability to cover is what we call the war on drugs. It started in this time period here. I can't draw, just save my life here, but the President Nixon came into office, and his idea of crime in the United States was because he truly believed that the problem with our system right now, our system at the time, was that drugs were the root of all evil. And so he started what was called the war on drugs. And presidents following him, dating back to Nixon's administration in the 70s, started getting really tough on drug offenders. And what you see here is that the war on drugs started in the early 70s, but when we get to the late 70s and into the early 90s, maybe even mid 90s, you saw this insanely sharp spike because there was a crackdown on drug offenders. And I find it very interesting to look back at the history of drugs in the United States. And there are times where cocaine was legal, opium was legal, marijuana was legal. And there is some very negative and ugly parts of our history as to why those drugs became illegal substances. And it's just an ugly history. So this is an important video to get us into that prison and understanding the prison system. In the next video, I'm going to walk you through how to complete the last assignment for criminology. And once you are finished with that assignment, which I'm going to give you really through next week to complete, we're done. And I really am surprised that we have gotten as much done as we did in this term, and that we covered a lot of material. And so make sure you watch the next video so that you know how to do the assignment. Always, if you have questions, by all means, you can email me. We can Zoom. I don't have a problem with Zooming. But please make sure if you have questions, you let me know. So thank you. Have a good day.